Hi, Sarah Morgan here with the Instagram account Cooking with the First Ladies. And today for the National First Ladies Library, I'm going to be cooking for Elizabeth Monroe as well as Lucretia Garfield. So on this day, back in 1768, Elizabeth Monroe was born. So happy birthday to Elizabeth Monroe. Now one of her famous dishes was known as an apple charlotte. She actually passed that recipe on to Martha Washington, who included it in her recipe book, which is a very extensive volume of recipes. So I'm going to show you how to make that today. It's actually very simple. So you'll want to get a loaf of French bread and crumble it up. I used a Ninja shredder, it made it really easy. You're going to use Granny Smith apples, slice them really thin, peel them, core them, and you're going to use brown sugar, nutmeg, and cinnamon. Now the original recipe actually calls for mace, not the stuff you would spray on someone, but if you don't have that at the store, you can just use a little bit more nutmeg. They're actually exactly the same. And then you're also going to want to have some butter and lemon zest. So in your Dutch oven, you're going to want to grease that up. Once you have all your materials together, you basically just layer. So sprinkle some breadcrumbs on the bottom, a little bit. You're going to want to make sure you have enough for the top too. Next you'll put in your apples, just a little bit, because you're going to want to make sure that you're layering. Do a little bit of your lemon zest. And then your spice and sugar mixture, and you'll just sprinkle that on. And again, you're going to want to make sure that you have about half of your spices left for when you put it on the top. So a little bit about Elizabeth Monroe. She wasn't one of the most popular first ladies, mostly because she did not follow in Dolly Madison's footsteps of hosting and entertaining at the White House. So that really rubbed people in Washington the wrong way. They kind of felt like they were aristocrats and sort of too elite for regular people. A lot of this is because of her French influence. George Washington sent the Monroes to France for him to be an American minister. Now one thing that she did do while she was in France was became very interested in Lafayette's wife, who was imprisoned and was going to be headed to the guillotine. So she stepped in, and when the French saw that there was so much interest by the American people in her death, they let her go. Now, if you know Hamilton, of course, you know Lafayette went on to assist the United States during the American Revolutionary War. I did forget to mention you're also going to want to take your butter, and that's going to be part of your layering too. Now Elizabeth Monroe did use her French influence to redecorate the White House, which is one thing she's also very well known for. She was redecorated in 1817 after the White House had been burned by the British in the War of 1812. When they redecorated the White House in the 1960s, her choices for furniture were seen as some of the most elaborate and most expensive pieces in the White House collection. So once you kind of get that layered in here, and you can also put your lemon zest directly on your apples. It's really just up to you. So once you've done that, you're going to use the rest of your breadcrumbs to top it off. Use the rest of your spices and sugar for the top. So you'll have a nice crust. And then what you're also going to want to do, lastly, is you're going to take 1 cup of butter and pour it all over the top before you bake it. You're going to bake it on 400 for about 30 minutes. So here's what it'll look like before. And here is your after product, a beautiful baked apple charlotte. You can serve this with ice cream, which is perfect for summer, or whipped cream, whichever you prefer. So here you have Elizabeth Monroe's apple charlotte. Now another dish that she enjoyed was mock turtle soup. Mock turtle soup was very popular, especially during the Revolutionary War. Turtle soup, actually, they say turtles have 7 distinct flavors of their meat. So in your mock turtle soup, they usually call for several different types of meat. Now, if you can use pork, I don't use pork. So instead, I substitute in a little extra beef fat, as well as uncured turkey bacon. What we did with this was we took a bone-in piece of beef, and we put it in our crock pot, and we made our own bone broth as the base. Then we shredded the meat, put that in. It also calls for red pepper and onions and garlic. And we sort of just let that simmer in the crock pot. Actually made the meat so tender, it was delicious. So here's the mock turtle soup here. Now mock turtle soup actually kind of fell out of popularity as time went on because Campbell's started making a canned version of mock turtle soup. So people just sort of stopped seeing that as a fancy dish. Now there's one restaurant still out there, it's in New Orleans, and that is where you can actually get real turtle soup. Now finally with your soup, what you top that with is lemon slices and hard-boiled egg. So you have a lovely soup to go with your apple charlotte. Now one last thing, the mock turtle soup actually calls for port wine. Not a lot, so you're just gonna want just a little bit of a wine glass. But turtle soup, they actually say you should drink a glass of sherry along with that. Now last thing, Lucretia Garfield. She was one of my favorite first ladies to learn about. Because even though she was only a first lady for about 6 months because her husband was shot and killed, she was just a very interesting lady. Lucretia, she was fearless, hardworking. She was just a great example of a lady. She had a lovely philosophy on the way that your attitude affects you. She not only believed that just by changing your outlook on your situation, but also your views on the mundane tasks can totally change the way that you look at things and your happiness, and also how your product turns out. She once said, the whole life became brighter. The very sunshine seemed to be flowing down through my spirit into the white loaves. And now I believe that my table is furnished with better bread than ever before. And this truth, as old as creation, seems just now to have become fully mine, that I need not to be the shrinking slave of toil, but its regal master. So she did not like doing chores, which I'm sure we can all relate to, and she especially did not like kneading bread. So I did make, this is Lucretia Garfield's white loaf bread, and this is from the First Lady's cookbook. So it's a very easy recipe. It is yeast, scalded milk, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and then you're gonna wanna use bread flour specifically. So once you've put your mixture together and you've let it rise, I usually do mine the night before because it does take about 2 hours to rise. Then like Lucretia, you'll want to knead the bread and most likely not enjoy it. And then put it in your well-greased bread pan. And this one you are going to bake on 450 for 10 minutes. And then you're going to turn it down to 350 and bake it for about 20-30 minutes longer. And this is the loaf that you will get. It's really tasty. It's just a really nice white bread. Now the last thing about Lucretia, she was a huge supporter of women and equality of the sexes, especially the women's right to vote. Now she did pass away 2 years before women were granted that right, but she very much advocated that for her entire life, including when she moved to California after her time in the White House. However, she did not support the suffragists. She did not like some of the tactics that they were using, so she kind of did her own thing. She was very outspoken, but in a very positive way. So I hope that you'll try to make some of your own Mrs. Garfield's bread, as well as Miss Monroe's apple charlotte and mock turtle soup. So thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.